Greetings, everyone. Thank you all very much for coming together to weave another beautiful fabric of Torah together through our immersion in this text and our immersion in the insights and lives of one another. We're in Parshat Tetzaveh, which is in the book of Exodus, begins with chapter 27, verse 20. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute at this point, we can share in the recitation of our blessings, giving thanks for this moment. Baruch atah
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu b'asot divrei Torah.
Thank you, God, for this opportunity to immerse ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah. We'll read together our English translation. I'll start off reading a few verses, and I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. Then I will share with you a focused study of the Torah portion, and then we'll open it up to our collective and collaborative conversation about it. Again, Exodus chapter 27, verse 20. You shall further instruct the Israelites to bring you clear oil of beaten olives for lighting, for kindling lamps regularly. Aaron and his son shall set them up in the tent of meeting, outside the curtain which is over the ark of the pact, to burn from evening to morning before Adonai. It shall be a due from the Israelites for all time throughout the ages. Richard, would you like to read a little bit at the very start of chapter 28?
You shall then advance your brother Aaron with his sons from among the Israelites to serve me as priests. Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, the sons of Aaron. Make sacral vestments for your brother Aaron for dignity and adornment. Next, you shall instruct all who are skillful, whom I have endowed with the gift of skill, to make Aaron's vestments, for consecrating him to serve me as priest. These are the vestments they are to make: a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a fringed tunic, headdress, and a sash. They shall make those sacred vestments for your brother Aaron and his sons, for service to me as priests. They, therefore, shall receive the gold, the blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and the fine linen.
Thank you. Sherry, would you like to read a little bit, starting with verse 6?
They shall make the ephod of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen, worked into the designs. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces attached. They shall be attached at its 2 ends, and the decorated band that is upon it shall be made like it, of 1 piece with it, of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of the fine twisted linen. Then take 2 lazuli stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on 1 stone, and the names of the remaining 6 on the other stone, and in the order of their birth. In the 2 stones you shall make seal engravings, the work of lapidary, of the names of the sons of Israel, having bordered them with frames of gold. Attach the 2 stones to the shoulder pieces of the ephod as stones for remembrance of the Israelite people, whose names Aaron shall carry upon his 2 shoulder pieces for remembrance before the Lord.
Thank you. Steve, would you like to read a little bit, starting at verse 13?
Sure, thank you very much. Then make frames of gold and 2 chains of pure gold. Braid these like corded work and fasten the corded chains to the frames. Want me to continue?
Sure.
You shall make a breast piece of decision, worked into a design. Make it in the style of the ephod, and make it of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen. It shall be square and double, a span in length and a span in width. Set in it mounted stones in 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be a row of carnelian, chrysolite, and emerald. The second row, a turquoise, a sapphire, and an amethyst. The third row, a jacinth and a crystal. And the fourth row, a beryl, a lapis lazuli, and a jasper. They shall be framed with gold in their mountings. The stones shall correspond in number to the names of the sons of Israel. 12 correspond to their names. They shall be engraved like seals, and each with its name for the 12 tribes.
Thank you, Steve. Let me invite Steve Brenton. Would you like to read starting at verse 22?
Yes, thank you. On the breastpiece, make braided chains of corded work in pure gold. Make 2 rings of gold on the breastpiece and fasten the 2 rings at the 2 ends of the breastpiece, attaching 2 golden cords to the 2 rings at the ends of the breastpiece. Then fasten the 2 ends of the cords to the 2 frames, which you shall attach the shoulder piece of the ephod at the front. Make 2 rings of gold and attach them to the 2 ends of the breastpiece at its inner edge, which faces the ephod. And make 2 other rings of gold and fasten them on the front of the ephod, low on the 2 shoulder pieces, close to its seam above the decorated band. The breastpiece shall be held in place by a cord of blue from its rings to the rings of the ephod, so that the breastpiece rests on the decorated band and does not come loose from the ephod. Aaron shall carry the names of the sons of Israel on the breastpiece of decision over his heart when he enters the sanctuary for remembrance before the Eternal at all times. Inside the breastpiece of decision you shall place the Urim and the Thummim, so that they are over Aaron's heart when he comes before the Eternal. Thus Aaron shall carry the instrument of decision for the Israelites over his heart before the Eternal at all times.
Thank you, Steve. And Dave Leb, would you like to read starting at verse 31?
33.
You shall make the robe of the ephod of pure blue. The opening for the head shall be in the middle of it. The opening shall be a binding of woven work round about. It shall be like the opening of a coat of mail, so that it does not tear. On its hem make pomegranates of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, all around the hem, with bells of gold between them, all around, a golden bell and a pomegranate. A golden bell and a pomegranate all around the hem of the robe. Aaron shall wear it while officiating, so that the sound of it is heard when he comes into the sanctuary before Adonai, and when he goes out, that he may not die.
Thank you, Dave. Jim, would you like to read a little beginning at verse 36?
Thank you, Rabbi. And thou shalt make a plate of pure gold and engrave upon it like the engravings of a signet, holy to the Lord. And thou shalt put it on a thread of blue, and it shall be upon the mitre. Upon the forefront of the mitre it shall be. And it shall be upon Aaron's forehead. And Aaron shall bear the iniquity committed in the holy things, which the children of Israel shall hallow, even in all their holy gifts. And it shall be always upon his forehead, that they may be accepted before the Lord. And thou shalt weave the tunic in checker work of fine linen. And thou shalt make a mitre of fine linen. And thou shalt make a girdle, the work of the weaver in colors.
Thank you so much, June. Let me invite Jim. Would you like to read beginning at verse 40?
Thank you, Rabbi. And for Aaron's sons also you shall make tunics, and make sashes for them, and make turbans for them, for dignity and adornment. Put these on your brother Aaron and on his sons as well. Anoint them and ordain them, and consecrate them to serve me as priests. You shall also make for them linen breeches to cover their nakedness. They shall extend from the hips to the thighs. They shall be worn by Aaron and his sons when they enter the tent of meeting or when they approach the altar to officiate in the sanctuary, so that they do not incur punishment and die. It shall be a law for all time for him and for his offspring to come.
Thank you so much. Robin, would you like to read at the very start of chapter 29?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. This is what you shall do to them in consecrating them to serve me as priests. Take a young bull of the herd and 2 rams without blemish, also unleavened bread, unleavened cakes with oil mixed in, and unleavened wafers spread with oil. Make these of choice wheat flour. Place these in one basket and present them in the basket, along with the bull and the 2 rams. Lead Aaron and his sons up to the entrance of the tent of meeting and wash them with water. Then take the vestments and clothe Aaron with the tunic, the robe of the ephod, and the breastplate, and gird him with the decorated band of the ephod. Put the headdress on his head and place the holy diadem upon the headdress. Take the anointing oil and pour it on his head and anoint him. Then bring his sons forward. Clothe them with tunics and wine turbans upon them, and gird both Aaron and his sons with sashes, and so they shall have priesthood as their right for all time. You shall then ordain Aaron and his sons.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Robin. Let me invite Margot. Would you like to read starting at 10?
You shall then, thank you, ordain Aaron and his sons. Lead the bull up to the front of the tent of meeting, and let Aaron and his sons lay their hands upon the head of the bull. Slaughter the bull before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and make some of the bull's blood be put and take some of the bull's blood and put it on the horns of the altar with your fingers. Then pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Take the fat that covers the entrails, the protuberances on the liver, and the 2 kidneys with the fat on them, and turn them into smoke upon the altar. The rest of the flesh of the bull, its hide and its dung, shall be put to the fire outside the camp. It is a sin offering.
Thank you so much, Margot. And let me invite Robert. Would you like to read a little bit beginning at verse 15?
Yes, thank you. Thou shalt also take 1 ram, and Aaron and his son shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. And thou shalt slay the ram, and thou shalt take his blood and sprinkle it round about upon the altar. And thou shalt cut the ram in pieces and wash the inwards of him and his legs, and put them into his pieces and unto his head. And thou shalt burn the whole ram upon the altar. It is a burnt offering unto the Lord. It is a sweet savor, an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And thou shalt take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. Then shalt thou kill the ram, and take of his blood, and put it upon the tip of the right ear of Aaron, and upon the tip of the right ear of his sons, and upon the thumb of their right hand, and upon the great toe of their right foot, and sprinkle the blood upon the altar round about. Thou shalt take of the blood that is upon the altar, and of the anointing oil, and sprinkle it upon Aaron, and upon his garments, and upon his sons, and upon the garments of his sons with him. And he shall be hallowed, and his garments, and his sons garments with him.
Thank you so much, Robert. David and Susan, would you like to read a little bit beginning at verse 22?
Yes, thank you very much. 22. And you shall take from the ram the fat and the broad tail, and the fat that covers the entrails, and the lobe on the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is on them, and the right thigh, for it is the installation ram, and 1 loaf of bread, and 1 cake of bread made with oil, and 1 wafer from the basket of flatbread that is before the Lord. And you shall put it all on the palms of Aaron and on the palms of his sons, and elevate it as an elevation offering before the Lord.
And you shall take them from their hand and burn them to smoke at the altar in addition to the burnt offering as a pleasant smell in front of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. It is an offering by fire to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. And you shall take the breast from the ram of ordination, that is Aaron's, and elevate it as an elevation offering in front of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and it shall be a portion for you. And you shall sanctify the breast, that is an elevation offering, and the thigh, that is a donation, that is elevated, and that is donated from the ram of ordination, from Aaron's and from his sons. And it shall be Aaron's and his sons as an eternal law from the children of Israel, because it is a donation, and it will be a donation from the children of Israel from the sacrifices of their peace offerings. Their donation to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. And the holy clothes that are Aaron's shall be his sons after him, to be anointed in them and to fill their hand in them. The priest in his place from among his sons, who will come to the tent of meeting to minister in the holy, shall wear them for 7 days.
Thank you
And
so much, both. Let me invite Carol. Thank you so much, David and Susie. If you'd like to read a little bit, Carol, starting with verse 31.
Certainly, thank you, Rabbi. You shall take the ram of ordination and boil its flesh in the sacred precinct. And Aaron and his sons shall eat the flesh of the ram and the bread that is in the basket at the entrance of the tent of meeting. These things shall be eaten only by those for whom expiation was made with them when they were ordained and consecrated. They may not be eaten by a layman, for they are holy. And if any of the flesh of the ordination or any of the bread is left until morning, you shall put what is left to the fire, and it shall not be eaten, for it is holy.
Thank you very much, Carol. Let me invite Justin, if you'd like to read starting at verse 35.
So shall you do to Aaron and his sons, according to all that I have commanded you. For 7 days you shall perform their investiture. And a bull as a sin offering you shall offer up every day for the atonements. And you shall purify the altar by performing atonement upon it. And you shall anoint it in order to sanctify it. For 7 days you shall perform atonement upon the altar and sanctify it. Henceforth the altar shall be a holy of holies. Whatever touches the altar will be holy. And this is what you shall offer upon the altar: lambs in their first year, 2 a day, continually. The one lamb you shall offer up in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer up in the afternoon. And 1/10 of fine flour, thoroughly mixed with 1/4 of hin of crushed olive oil, and a libation of 1/4 of a hin of wine for the one lamb. And the other lamb you shall offer up in the afternoon. You shall offer it up like the meal offering of the morning and its libation, as a spirit of satisfaction, a fire offering to the Lord. It shall be a continual burnt offering for your generations at the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, where I will arrange meetings with you to speak with you there. There I will arrange meetings with the children of Israel, and it will be sanctified by my glory. I will sanctify the tent of meeting and the altar, and I will sanctify Aaron and his sons to serve me as Kohanim. I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel, and I will be their God. They will know that I, the Lord, am their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt in order that they may dwell, and that I may dwell in their midst. I am the Lord their God.
Thank you so much, Justin. And Mark Levenstein, would you like to read a little bit at the very start of chapter 30?
Thank you. You shall make an altar for burning incense. Make it of acacia wood. It shall be a cubit long and a cubit wide. It shall be square and 2 cubits high, its horns of one piece with it. Overlay it with pure gold, its top, its sides round about, and its horn. And make a gold molding for it round about. And make 2 gold rings for it under its molding. Make them on its 2 side walls on opposite sides. They shall serve as holders for the poles with which to carry it. Make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Place it in front of the curtain that is over the ark of the pact, in front of the cover that is over the pact, where I will meet with you. On it Aaron shall burn aromatic incense. He shall burn it every morning when he tends the lamps. And Aaron shall burn it at twilight when he lights the lamps. A regular incense offering before the Lord throughout the ages. You shall not offer an alien incense on it, a burnt offering or a meal offering. Neither shall you pour a libation on it. Once a year, Aaron shall perform purification upon its horn with blood of the sin offering of purification. Purification shall be performed upon it once a year throughout the ages. It is most holy to the Lord.
Thank you all very much. That's our entire Torah portion for the week. I'd like to provide you with a little bit of focus study on this week's Torah portion. Then we'll open it up for our conversation. If you have a copy of the study sheet, I invite you to take it out now. The focus of our text is on work that's being done in preparation for the anointing both of the Mishkan and of Aaron and his sons to serve as priests in the Mishkan. And a key part of all of that, which is in this week's Torah portion, is the design of the garments that Aaron will wear and that his sons as priests will wear. There are really 2 sections in all of Torah where color has a prominent role. And one is describing the materials that will go into the construction of the Mishkan, and the other is this one, describing the clothing that the Aaron and his sons will wear in serving as priests in the Mishkan. For our point of entry into the written text of this week's Torah portion, I'd like to have us take a look at the painting, which is a triptych that's on the study sheet, done by Joseph Zrichen, entitled Les Voyages Extraordinaires, d'après Jules Verne. And Joseph Zrichen himself is a very fascinating man. He was born in Morocco. He spent a considerable amount of time in France and in Israel. He is a doctor, an epidemiologist, and he has been playing quite a significant role, of course, during the pandemic in appearing on television and elsewhere, explaining the nature of the pandemic, what to do about it. He is also a very fine artist, and this is one of his pieces. So the fact that it's a triptych is something that we're going to explore in the course of our study together. And what is the significance of the particular form of an artwork that is known as a triptych? So this week's study session I've entitled The Beauty of Attuning Body and Spirit. And it has a lot to do with what is raised here in the text about the description of the garments that Aaron and his sons will be wearing in the course of performing their service in the Mishkan. I'd like to provide a little bit of kind of background to our exploration of this week's text by taking a step back and reviewing some of the things that we discussed last week with our Torah portion Truma, which was describing the construction of the Mishkan. So in number 1, on the study sheet, I have some remarks that I shared with you last time, noting how the entire story of creation was presented in Torah in the course of one chapter. The narrative about the events at Mount Sinai took up 3 chapters. The story of the Exodus takes up 11 chapters. And then the description of the construction of the Mishkan takes up a total of 13 chapters. I suggested last time that what this is revealing is a kind of evolution, if you will, towards what the whole journey out of Egypt is really all about. The fact that creation takes 1 chapter, well, in creation, this is totally the work of God, the source of all life. Mount Sinai is that moment when God reveals God's self to the Israelite people. Then the story of the Exodus, which takes up more chapters, is really what can be thought of as kind of a collaborative effort between God and Israel. God is there manifesting God's self through these amazing wonders and miracles, yet the Israelites actually need to do something. And in fact, they initiate the whole Exodus by calling out to God, and then they have to make a decision whether they're going to stay or if they're going to go. And then the construction of the Mishkan is really the work of the Israelites. This is their first act as a collective to design the Mishkan. And I suggested, as we look through these other comments, well, let's take a look at number 2. Let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them, which Rashi understands it's to make a house of holiness. And then we looked last week at a bit of commentary from Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who said, the first step in building this Mishkan involves priming the material resource as a vessel for godliness. So when we put all that together, I suggested that what Rabbi Schneerson and other commentators have pointed out is that the Mishkan is really an exercise in not an external, but an internal building project. It is describing an initiative whereby each of us, and in this case, in the story, the Israelites can begin to repurpose, redesign their interior lives in order to make themselves and their community a place where God can dwell. So it was dealing with the interior life. Then we come to this week's Torah portion. Number 3 has a verse from the opening of our Torah portion. Make sacred vestments for your brother Aaron, for dignity, kavod, and beauty, tiferet. I want to suggest that what's happening in this week's Torah portion is, now that we have had some kind of lesson in how to prepare our inner self to be able to receive God, now we're turning to a description of these garments are standing in for a lesson in how to prepare one's outer being, one's bodily life, as a way to enhance and bring God into the world. So the notion that we have here of these garments are really meant to serve as a symbol, and they're pointing us, as all symbols do, to somewhere else rather than the object itself. So what is this somewhere else that this series of garments is supposed to be pointing us towards? So if you look at number 5, we're going to begin looking at the notion of how this triptych and the notion of a triptych can begin to give us some sense of where we're to be looking, where we're being pointed towards with this notion of the garments. So let's talk a little bit first about the whole form of a triptych. Where did it start? What does it mean? Why is it used by some artists? So a triptych, a 3-part work of art that is fused together, hinged together actually. A triptych first appears in the Middle Ages as an art form, and it was used primarily to adorn altarpieces of churches. And it has the capacity to represent a narrative. In a sense, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it has the ability to examine a subject from multiple perspectives. So it has three separate elements that complement each other. And the way it's physically structured, it has the capacity so that three seemingly separate pieces hinged together can be folded on top of one another, and thereby creating, if you will, a single piece. So that's the form of a triptych, and the unique perspective and perhaps insights that it can provide. So then a triptych, of course, three pieces. So I'd like to take a moment for us to reflect on the significance of the number 3. So in the Jewish tradition, it has to do with some of the days of creation and what each of the first 3 days of the days of creation signify. So the first day of creation signifies the absolute singularity represented by God. God is there and brings about all of existence. That's what day 1 is meant to have us be drawn to, the absolute power of this force that we call God. The second day, something quite different happens. The second day really represents the power of separation, because what's happening in the second day is that God makes an expanse which separates water above from water below. And one of the fascinating things about the text of the second day of creation is that it's the only one of those first 6 days in which it doesn't say, and God saw that it was good. So the rabbinic commentary about this is that separation in and of itself, if that's where things end, is not such a good thing. And so unlike days 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the text doesn't say, and God saw that it was good. Then we get to the third day. In the third day, what happens is that the waters below are gathered together, which then allows land to appear. And so in Jewish tradition, especially in Kabbalah, day 3 represents harmony. And the lesson there is that sometimes through separation and distinction, goals of unity can be furthered. In our personal lives, in our communal lives, in our friendship lives, there's a danger, there's such a thing as dangerous separation, because you become so divided and separate, you just become at war with one another and you can't get along. But there's also something that we might call dangerous unity, in which there is a suppression of differences of opinion and of our distinctions among us. To be able to navigate between dangerous separation and dangerous unity, and to somehow be able to weave together a very dynamic harmony, I want to suggest requires a bit of artistry. It requires a skill to be able to kind of weave together separation into a new form of unity. So that's the significance in Jewish tradition about the number 3, that it represents this harmony. So now I'm looking again at our triptych, and what is happening within our triptych. I want to suggest that what's happening here is that symbolically, Aaron is now having placed on him 2 kinds of garments. One that's called for dignity, which in Hebrew is kavod, and that comes from the word meaning heavy. And then he's also being given garments that convey a sense of beauty, which is in Kabbalah kind of the exposed self, the lightness, if you will. And so symbolically, Aaron is carrying both of these, the heaviness and the lightness. And he is in sense in being commissioned to be the artist, to be able to weave together these two forces in order to bring something that will achieve a new level of harmony. So I'd like to share with you a beautiful poem that's on the back side. And that is by one of the great American poets, Mary Oliver. And this was a poem that she simply called Poem, although it then also had a subtitle that eventually got attached to it called The Spirit Likes to Dress Up. Let me share her poem with you. The spirit likes to dress up like this: 10 fingers, 10 toes, shoulders, and all the rest at night in the black branches, in the morning in the blue branches of the world. It could float, of course, but would rather plumb rough matter. Airy and shapeless thing, it needs the metaphor of the body, lime and appetite, the oceanic fluids. It needs the body's world, instinct and imagination, the dark hug of time, sweetness and tangibility, to be understood, to be more than pure light that burns where no one is. So it enters us in the morning, shines from brute comfort like a stitch of lightning, and at night lights up the deep and wondrous drownings of the body like a star.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, thank you. I believe what Mary Oliver here is describing is that the spirit is not fulfilled without the body. To become mature, the spirit needs to live in a human body. And one of the fascinating aspects of Mary Oliver's poem is that she reverses our usual point of view regarding the spirit-body dichotomy, because here the spirit becomes quite, in a sense, tangible to us. The spirit becomes quite knowable to us. It's the body, the way she describes it, that appears to be mysterious with its, quote, deep and wondrous drownings. For our final bit of journey through this week's Torah portion and the significance of the number 3, the significance of what it means to transform one's body life in order to be able to serve God as we have transformed our inner life, I'd like to return back to our painting. And what I'd like to note that is so fascinating is that our artist, Joseph Zringham, has named this painting, this triptych, Le Voyage Extraordinaire. And in parentheses, it says, d'après Jules Verne. So what is that in reference to? Well, Le Voyage Extraordinaire was a series or a sequence of novels that Jules Verne wrote between 1863 and 1905. And according to Jules Verne's editor, the goal of this enterprise was to, quote, outline all the geographical, geological, physical, historical, and astronomical knowledge amassed by modern science, and to recount in an entertaining and picturesque format the history of the universe. Now, Jules Verne himself said about the project, quote, "It is my intention to complete before my working days are done a series which shall conclude in story form my whole survey of the world's surface and the heavens. Verne made clear that his object was more literary than scientific and said, I do not in any way pose as a scientist. My object has been to depict the earth, and not the earth alone, but the universe. So he saw this entire body of work that he completed over the course of some 40 years to be in totality a description of all of the universe. We're familiar with many of the individual works that make up this whole body that he called Les Voyages Extraordinaires. They include Journey to the Center of the Earth, From the Earth to the Moon, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Around the World in 80 Days, The Mysterious Island. How many works were there in total that were part of this Les Voyages Extraordinaires? 54.
Oh,
How many parshiot are there in Torah? 54. 54 divided by 3 is 18. Chai, life. We humans are the intermediaries between the unity that brought us into being and the harmony that we are capable of creating by bringing into attunement body and spirit, the material and the immaterial, the timeful and the timeless. And in Kabbalah, that harmony is called Tiferet, beauty. And with that, I would love to open it up and hear your thoughts and reflections on this week's Torah portion. If you raise your hand, I'd love to call you. David Phillips, go ahead.
What I see in the triptych in the left is the sea, the Mayim, and all the creatures in it. And in the middle, the sky and galaxies, and on the right, blood with all its creatures in it.
Wow. Beautiful, David. Thank you. I love that. Thank you very much. Okay. And others like to share? Yes, Steve Breton, yes.
I would just have a question. It's, as a cello player, there's a piece for a cello titled After a Dream, and unfortunately I can't remember who wrote it. But anyway, it's something like Perez de Rêve or something. So my question is, the French there, is that the dreams of Jules Verne, the parenthetical? Any people that speak French around here to say?
I'm sorry, what exactly did you?
Oh, I'm saying, is the parenthetical remark saying after the dream, or of the dreams of Jules Verne?
Oh, it doesn't really say after the dreams of Jules, it's just after Jules Verne, meaning a lot of times artists will create something and they'll say this particular work is meant to be in the spirit of or be inspired by someone else. So
okay, dream inspiration.
Yeah, so our artist Joseph Zarin has created this piece, which he is entitled something that Jules Verne actually did, and he means that it. So in a sense, what our artist here is saying is he's creating something that is meant to convey the totality of the universe in a sense. Mm-hmm. That's what this 3-part work of art is designed to do. Just as Jules Verne's body of work, Les Voyages Extraordinaires, was designed to do, was to present to us the totality of the universe, the full knowledge of the universe. And that's what our artist here is perhaps suggesting, is that in this triptych, it is represented the totality of the universe and all that we know. Okay. All that there is. Thank you for asking that. And others, Dave Leb, yeah.
I just noticed that each pane consists only of 3 different colors. So whatever that means.
Dave, I had not even noticed that. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, so there again, this power of 3 moving from singularity to separation and then harmony so playing with this number 3 is just so fascinating. Thank you for pointing it out. And June, go ahead and unmute and share with us.
To me, when I looked at this, each one looks like the negative of the other. Like one is blue background. If you notice, the shapes are the same on each of them. And it just looks like one is the negative or so superimposed and the reverse of the next.
So again, it's so fascinating. This notion, this form called a triptych has the capacity to typically and traditionally they were hinged pieces. So you could fold them one on top of the other. So in a sense, what appears to be all distinct and separate, when handled properly, is able to return to the unity. So thank you for that. And Margot?
So if triptychs were used in the early churches, which were primarily Catholic, perhaps a triptych for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Perhaps
And,
so.
you know, and that's why a triptych.
They were often in the Middle Ages, the triptychs were used to display scenes from the life of Jesus. Yes. Okay. So I would suspect that would be the case.
I'll wait for everybody. I have some mundane questions.
Okay.
Where did they get all the, I'm sorry, I have to be literal. Where did the Israelites get all the gold and the precious jewels with which to adorn Aaron?
Well, if you want to look at it from this as a descriptive piece of something that happened, then you could say, oh, well, that's part of what they got from the Egyptians when they left. Okay. If you want to look at it more as a piece of poetry and a story, right, then those beautiful materials are there to enhance, to move the story forward, to say we're going to be focusing on something that has color in it, and color points us towards the sacred. Okay.
Well, and I'm more like Luther. I find the adornment off-putting to me, the necessity for that much adornment.
Okay, you like your spiritual leaders to be what, unadorned and simple and plain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, very good.
There we go.
Okay. And how about if their inner life was kind of more,
well, that could be glorious, but that can be glorious and should shine through my spiritual leader.
All right. And maybe that's what's happening here. Okay. So let me invite some others who'd like. Richard?
Yeah, on the subject, one thing I got out of it, it was reminiscent too in the painting that Ms. Beckerman.
Yeah, Carol Beckerman.
Carol
Yes.
Beckerman has at the very bottom talks about the balance. That I saw the adornment or the honor as this is the outward man that's looked at, and there is some respect for. He's doing something in the world to lead us. He's a strong person and gives us confidence. And the other side of it is the beauty that is then allowing to come from inside of him, the spirit that comes in that guides him. And that when we attend to the rules, whatever they are, the laws, and pay attention and learn respect and learn to behave as the Lord would have us, it unleashes within us. We have two halves of our brain, and they do different things. And we're always struggling as we grow and age and go through development to integrate those two aspects of a spiritual life, but one doesn't walk away from the material world. One then puts that to work within the material world to facilitate the growth of the congregation. And I thought this spoke to it pretty well.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. I see some hands up. So let me call on Carol, and then we'll go to Robert, and then we'll go over to David and Susan, and then Steve. So Carol?
Well, in looking at the triptych, and knowing that he's an epidemiologist, I just saw microscopic slides and looking at what is unseen without the aid of something. So again, getting us to focus on perhaps at the basic level, or looking at these enlarged images of things that are normally unseen, we can find under the microscope that everything looks the same.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you, Carol. I love that. And Robert?
Yes, thank you so much. I always appreciate what you bring in the way of art, and poetry was delightful. You know, I was thinking that any artist does it out of love. He does it out of a passion, irrespective of how qualified. If that is a passion that that person has, if he's a true artist, he gives birth. But that piece of art is as dead unless somebody brings it to life through conversation that's meaningful and elevated and of assistance to our lives. And I really want to thank you, because I've been reflecting as we've been chatting and thinking the role of the artist throughout history has been vital. And what does it say if we don't have an appreciation for art? What does it say about us? And I'll leave that as a question.
Thank you so much.
It's yeah.
Thank you, Robert. That's profound. Questions that we should consider indeed. And David and Susan.
So there's an old saying that clothes make the man or the person. And although I don't necessarily believe that, I think that when you are adorned in some way with jewels and fine clothing, that it does make you kind of want to live up to that which you are wearing. And at the same time, it said that the priest had the names on his garment, so that whenever he went into the Holy of Holies, he was carrying with him all the people of the Israelites. So it was, you know, it was holding him up to a certain responsibility, but he was reminded of the burden too.
Reminded.
That's very nice. Reminded. Very nice. Thank you.
I'll buy that, Susan.
Thank you. And
Thanks, Michael.
Catherine, go ahead and unmute and share with us. And yes, go ahead and unmute.
I was just thinking of the poem and about this idea of the body being necessarily there. And I was thinking that in the Parshat itself, the garment set us up for thinking about spirituality as being something that is suggested by the garment, but is separate from the garment. But then the sacrifice, all those rams, that is the body, that is the nitty gritty sort of visceral part of it. And we have to go through that in order for the priest to be ordained. And I found that very interesting.
This sense of that tactile experience with all those animal sacrifices and everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. All right. And others who'd like to share? Steve?
Oh, I wanted to say, when I was a kid, I read many of Jules Verne's novels, and one of the ones, Earth to the Moon, he said the Americans were likely to do it and launch it from Cape Canaveral. He had even predicted it.
Really?
Based on the physics, you get the most tangential velocity if you leave from Cape Canaveral.
Well, that's fascinating. I didn't know he predicted that the Americans would launch from Cape Canaveral.
Yeah, also I grew up in Pittsburgh, and Admiral Rickover was in the news a lot. And when I worked at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, I worked for Chairman Zek, who piloted the Nautilus underneath the Arctic.
Wow.
So,
well, I know that Margot's household will have a lot to have a conversation with you about Admiral Rickover.
Oh, yes, maybe afterwards I can tell you about my husband's experience with Admiral Rickover.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Okay, and others, Dave Leb?
I just want to say that 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was my book report in high school, 4 years in a row.
That's great. Some of us
Did you say-
remember what our bar bat mitzvah Torah portion was, and you remember.
Did he say 3 years in a row?
Yeah, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's fabulous. Okay, and a great movie with Kirk Douglas. Okay, and Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, give an argument for the vestments. It turned out that Moses had a lot of, the people saw him do the 10 plagues and all kinds of good stuff. And then came the Aaron and so forth. But the point is, now come the sons. The sons are kind of, nobody knows of them. And how does one transmit authority from one level to the next level? United States were having that trouble. How do you pass the power on? And I see the vestments as a way of doing that, where basically they don't have that magic stick that Moses had, but they got the vestments. So I think that people, to be led, they need some of that show and more or less dog and pony show, basically, that they have to have it so that they could get into the mood.
So yeah, what you're suggesting is there's a certain performative dimension to leadership, if you will. And so I'd like to kind of wrap this together by acknowledging that the life of the body and the life of the spirit are sometimes not in sync with one another. And sometimes they can be at war with one another, that they have different agendas and different directions that they each want to go in. And the message of the text here between this Torah portion and last week's Torah portion seems to be how critical it is, if you're going to be a free and righteous people, it's critical to have both body and spirit aligned and attuned with one another. And that when we're capable of living that way, with our body and our spirit, not pursuing different objectives, but aligned with one another, then we can achieve true freedom, true personal freedom, and true communal freedom, where we are in common purpose and it transcends our own individual appetites. So with that, I'm so grateful that we are aligned in common purpose. We share our differences and we weave them together in a garment that is truly quite beautiful. Thank you all so much. Look forward to our next gathering. Be well, everyone.
Robert,
Yes.
Thank you,
I
Rabbi.
think you'd be very pleased to know that there's a petition, I guess, for the ballot to for more art and music in the public schools. So there are people out. I guess they have to get enough signatures, gathering signatures, and it's for art and music. And I thought you would appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. When I went to school, I'm taking up time, Rabbi, but we had music and all those things that we really didn't care about. But as we mature, we realize that the soul seeks beauty, and the greatest art of all, the second greatest art of all, is nature. And I would offer the greatest art is a life well lived. But we are devoid of an understanding of beauty in our culture now. We are so, forgive me, but so engrossed in material things, instead of having those two wings of the material and the spiritual in balance, which is what Rabbi was talking about. I'm just using my own language. You are all a delight to be with. You're such unifiers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really enjoy being with you.
Thank you all very much. Look forward to our next gathering. Be well.
Thank